Hello and welcome to the Categorically Romance podcast. I'm Aaron.
And I'm Bree.
And today we are doing our Medical March Books Club episode, and we are joined by our good friend Alicia. Alicia, welcome back to the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Doing great. Glad to have you here, as well as our Books Club guest from last month, Christina. Welcome back to the podcast. So good to have you. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me back.
Of course.
This is going to be so fun.
It is. Well, so we decided to do Medical March, and Bree, you picked the theme for this month. Was it because they both started with an M, or did you have a bigger plan in mind?
I think it was because I got approved on NetGalley for JC Harroway's latest medical, and I was like, well, I guess we could stick with the theme of doing lines, and it's like, why not do medical? And then we learned about the Blitz literally days after, so it was just kind of like, oh wow, this was perfect timing. I don't know. And I think also too, I was listening to Fated Mates, and they had an author on, I think it was KJ Charles, and she used to edit for Mills and Boone Medical once upon a time. And there was this kind of conversation around North Americans don't, then Sarah and Jen were they obviously came up with reading Love Swept and Presents, don't really read medical. And I was like, maybe, we should have our gang of friends come together and we should read them and talk about them. And maybe it'll inspire people on this side of the pond to give them a read. I don't know.
Yeah. Check out the Harlequin website, because that's where you have to get them. But there's tons of great medicals on there.
Yeah. So Alicia and Christina, had you ever read a medical before?
This is actually my first one.
Yes. What about you, Christina?
Yeah, I haven't either. I had a few that I had picked up, but honestly, I never really considered reading them.
Yeah, Aaron, that's what we were going for, right?
Yes, it was. So perfect guest to have with us today.
Okay. All right. So both of y'all. So Alicia, Christina, why hadn't you read one of these before?
I guess because, when I was on the Harlequin website, and we had talked about this before, I'm relatively new to Harlequin. Mm-hmm. And so for me, part of jumping in is understanding what all the different lines have to offer. And when I read the description of some of the medical books, it just felt like, well, this is just Presents or Desire. I didn't really get what the difference is. It just felt like, oh, it's Presents, but somebody happens to be a doctor. It didn't mesh with what I thought it would have been in my head. So
what about its screen presents to you? Was it the locations?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, exactly. It was the locations. Everyone was quite wealthy, it seemed
mm-hmm.
It just,
I was expecting,
I was expecting more ER, but the book version.
Okay.
Or Chicago Medical, but the book version, right?
Yeah.
So that's what prevented me from actually picking one up and reading it.
Okay. What about you, Alicia?
I have more of a personal reason for not doing it up until now, is I was always hesitant because of being someone with a disability. I was always hesitant of how that stuff was treated in the medical romance books.
Mm-hmm.
So this being my first one, it wasn't too bad. there was things that I think I picked up on more because I've been through a lot of surgeries and things like that. So the medical jargon made sense to me, kind of thing. So it wasn't too heavy into the depressing side of it, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Or the overly sad side of it. That was my concern, is people just checkboxing it, we need a person with a disability.
Yeah.
So, but this wasn't it. So.
Yeah, I remember when I picked up my first one, and it was Sarah was doing the podcast with me,
mm-hmm.
she spent so much of her life in the hospital with medical, for her medical issues. So she's it just was she was a little hesitant, she was I'll pick them up and I'll read them, but I don't really find hospital sexy.
I was worried that it would be romanticized, and I'm it's not really.
Yeah.
Got
it. I mean, I've read my fair share. Erin, what about you? Like prior to you picking up your first one, did you have any hesitations? Did you jump right in? Like what were your initial thoughts?
I had some hesitations, and I'm not sure exactly why. It might be more superficial with me, is that the covers aren't as exciting as some of the other in the Harlequin, Mills, and Boone lineup. And so I guess it's just reading a book by its cover and being like, well, this doesn't appear all that exciting, or not really knowing what exactly was going to be in the pages. Like, is it going to be just lots of medical situations and then there's a romance that happens, I wasn't sure what I was going to get. And so I just kind of stayed away from them for a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You know what? I think there's something to that, Erin, because the covers are not, you're right, they're not very enticing. I would say probably this and the romance line, the covers are not great
Mm-hmm.
in comparison to what you see, in romantic suspense, desire, presents. They're a little on the dull side. I think I would agree.
Well, I did some digging. I was wondering, first and foremost, like when the line started, because I was like, I think we've all probably seen, like out of the corner of our eye. Like I remember here, we used to have this used bookstore that now I'm kicking myself for, but it was before I was reading Harlequin. Like they would sell a lot of the old vintage nurse romances. And now that I think about it, they were Harlequin. And I'm like, was that the medical line? Well, no. So I found one, like, okay, people, they sell books on Etsy, apparently. So I found like some people selling vintage nurse romances on Etsy. And the titles, like the first one that I saw was called Tabitha and Moonlight by Betty Neels, a name that we've heard before. They were actually part of the romance line. So this title was Harlequin Romance number 1905. And I mean, the line has, so medical specifically started in 2001. They released 2 in January, called Prescriptions and Promises by Jessica Matthews and A Mother by Nature by Caroline Anderson. And then the next month in February, we began getting the 4 titles. So I was like, what? I have to know like what started this. Okay, so that's 2001. So Christina, you mentioned ER. So the show ER, which I did not realize this, was actually created by novelist Michael Crichton. We all may know him from Jurassic Park and Lost World. I was like, what? So that show ran on NBC from September 1994 through April 2009. And at the time, like it was the longest running like medical drama until Grey's Anatomy came along in 2005. So I was like, clearly there was an interest. Like we saw like the nurse boom in romance novels and like the 60s and 70s. And then we get this television show that was like a really big hit and then gets followed up by freaking Grey's Anatomy, which is like a life force. So it's like, obviously there was some interest there. I found, so there's a blog out there called Vintage Nurse Romance Novels.blogspot. Highly recommend anybody check it out. That's the host of it is a nurse, and she just like goes to thrifting and online and like collects different old vintage nurse romances and posts about them. She even has like a spin-off site that's dedicated to the cover artists specifically, which I thought was really cool. We love learning about the cover artists.
Oh yeah.
But then I found this website, this article from University of Wisconsin at Milwaukee, and there was like a whole thing they did on nurse romances. And the author wrote that many nurse romance novelists wrote scenes that illustrated the incompatibility of beauty ideals and fair workplace dynamics. Characters are seen trying to strike an elusive balance of femininity and professionalism in order to be recognized as both desirable women and respected colleagues, an impossibility given society's double standards. For example, dialogues about whether it's worth a woman's time to apply nail polish for a date when it will just have to be removed before work the next day. This is clearly talking about old school romances. Imbue a sense of humor about beauty standards, while conversations about how to politely discourage the attention of male residents acknowledges the greater inequalities faced by women in the workplace. So I thought that was interesting. I was like, I mean, I think it would be, I really wonder if people are actually studying kind of like the evolution of nurse romances. I think it would be interesting to see the different like how like medical situations were happening, medications, the rise of technology, like what were they using back then? I just thought, I was like, man, I think it's really cool that we're going to be talking about this today, because these types of romances have, been around for a long time. I feel like maybe here in North America, they were popular once upon a time and then not so much now. I think because they're out of sight, out of mind. Like people don't go to the Harlequin website here. But were you guys watchers of any of the shows? Like, I think that was my hesitancy was like, I've never been someone that watched ER or watched Grey's Anatomy. So did you all watch any of those?
Yeah, I did. I watched ER. I was a big fan when it was on. I think I watched up to season 10 or 11 of Grey's Anatomy, but I didn't start watching Grey's Anatomy for like until it was years after it had already been on air. I was a latecomer to Grey's, but yeah.
I grew up on ER. That was always in my house. So I mainly grew up on ER. Grey's Anatomy wasn't really my thing. I think I watched to season 5. I kind of gave up when the one character was like having a relationship with her dead fiance.
Oh gosh.
Like I was like, I'm out. I think it's like season 5 or 6. I was like, I'm good. I watched all of ER, like ER. My mom watched ER. That came out when I was 5, 4. So I grew up with ER pretty much. And I really liked ER. And then I guess I pulled away from like watching the shows because having to be in and out of hospitals in my real life, it's not fun. So I was like, I'm good.
Yeah. What about you, Aaron?
I watched a little bit of ER, more so that like just in the 90s and, you know, the community where I was raised, it's like you just talked about what you watched on TV last night with, you know, your schoolmates or your workmates or whatever. And you know, in the 90s, it was like, oh, the show ER, this George Clooney guy, like it's really a big deal. So I caught an episode here or there, but it never really stuck with me. And then I was in college when Grey's Anatomy began, and it kind of just felt like the same thing. It's like, oh, there's this new show, this Patrick Dempsey guy, like, and it's a medical show. So it just kind of, not being into ER, I hadn't jumped into Grey's Anatomy either, though I've been told I should because it's very intriguey. Like, you don't know who's going to die, really.
Yeah. And I think I think it's very comforting because my mom watched a lot of soap operas when I was growing up, and they were always centered around hospital. I mean, General Hospital. Right. What's the other one? One Life to Live. I'm trying to remember the names.
Oh, I haven't heard General Hospital in so long.
Yeah, Days of Our Lives. I mean, they all centered Guiding Light. All of those old ones. They're all off the air now, with the exception, I think, of maybe 2 are left. But those were all centered around hospitals.
Yeah. My husband watches a lot of them. He's like really into Grey's Anatomy. He has not watched ER, but he loves House. He loved House.
Oh, yeah.
And he loves The Good Doctor, because I think the character, like the doctor in that, is autistic. He loves that one as well. But I don't know. Like I don't watch like the scripted shows. Now, if it's like a docu series or whatever, that's following. Like I've been watching one on Discovery Plus. They're currently like in New Orleans following like EMTs there, like the night shift workers. I love that type of stuff, but it's not scripted. You know, it's just like you're following them in the ambulance and it's Mardi Gras and it's like them showing up to get some drunk person or whatever, you know, and I can do that. But like the actual like medical drama, I don't know. I've watched a little bit of like Chicago Med. A lot of these shows are set in Chicago. I don't know what it is. And like it'll pull me in, but I just can't commit. I don't know what it is. Like, I think because like I always cry and I'm like, oh, I can't just sit here and watch a show that I know is going to make me cry like over and over again. But I mean, what do you guys think it is? Like obviously these are popular. Like, what do you think people enjoy about them?
The high stakes, maybe?
Yeah, I was going to say same.
Yeah.
And it's an enclosed community that unless you have to have, there's a barrier to access. I think. So the idea of being a viewer and seeing what goes on in this community that is removed from most of the public, because unless you're a medical professional, you're not allowed in, right? So I think there's a element of, oh, so that's what they think. Oh, that's what they do. That's how they view, patients.
Mhm.
That's what their relationships look like. I think that part is interesting.
Do you think that these shows, so like, medical shows are really popular. People love the firefighter shows. I think any first responder series, they just tend to really have like dedicated fan bases, and we're constantly seeing them. And now they're like overlapping. Like, I think one show you'll see like characters from this show pop up in this show. Like, they're doing a lot of that now, like that blending. Do you think it's like a hope thing that, at the end of the day, people are saved or they're not? Like, I don't know. Do you think it's like it's a hope thing that people are getting from these?
I think there's probably an element of that. It doesn't seem to be as much of a thing lately, though I haven't followed pop culture to the letter, but definitely when I was growing up, first responders were definitely hero worshipped. There was just a lot of propaganda of like, these people put their lives on the line every day. They deserve all the respect in the world, so there was just a lot of hero worship around the firefighters, the police officers, the medical field. And so I think it's a fascination catering to that, just the let's show people, quote unquote, what it's like to be in this line of work, whether it be, any of those careers.
I think about like growing up, I think it was like Friday or Saturday night. I used to watch Cops because it was it was actually kind of
Cops,
funny.
Friday nights. Yep, Friday nights. Yep.
You never knew what these guys were going to get into. It was always like some drunk person like cussing them out. And then kind of like you said, Alicia, like when you have spent so much time like in the hospital. So then like as someone who was a law enforcement officer, I don't really want to watch it anymore.
I don't like it. Like, it's just
like,
like, it's romanticizing something that's not fun.
I'm like, dude, those long, like 14-hour days at work are not that glorious. Let's talk about the actual books themselves, the line itself. So, I think in those shows, right, I'm assuming as someone who has not watched them yet, there's going to be love stories, right? I'm sure the writers are going to make sure they're there. But in our medical line, the focus of the story must be on the development of the central romantic relationship against the backdrop of a contemporary medical setting. So I feel like this is a line that is delivering us workplace romance on a platter. They're 50,000 words. So it's like it has to be really tight, I think. What did you all, Alicia, you start, like what did you pick and what did you think about it?
Secret Son to Change His Life by Alison Roberts. I think this came out in February of this year. I chose it strictly because of the boy in the wheelchair on the cover because I was curious.
Okay.
Yeah.
And like, funnily enough, they actually use a lot of terms that I'm used to from having cerebral palsy and stuff like that. It wasn't a kid with cerebral palsy, but I thought they used infarct, which is medical jargon for like a brain bleed when a child's born. So like little random stuff that no one else would probably pick up on. But mainly, this is about John, and her name was Bree. I just thought of you every time I read it because spelled the same exact way. I'm like, I can't not. Like 7 years prior, they had like a one night stand, and of course she got pregnant. And then the child ended up having spina bifida, and she never saw him again because he was one of those like people that like to jump out of airplanes. Like he went to places that were like remote and could never find him and all that kind of stuff. And then he comes back 7 years later when she starts, they're both like EMTs. And then she starts as an EMT working in his department. And then they run into each other 7 years later. And it's basically how she doesn't tell him right away that he has a child, which kind of bugged me, I won't lie. Like miscommunication is a big thing for me. I don't like it. And there was a lot of it in this one. That was the only thing that dinged it for me down to a 4-star. But like I understood too, because it was the child specifically had a disability. So it's like you want to make sure the person's going to stay in the child's life because you don't want to introduce them to random people and be like, hey, this is your dad. And then they slowly start falling back in love with each other. And then a medical emergency happens with the child and they fall in love while the kid's in the hospital, pretty much.
Yeah. Well, that kind of goes back to what Christina, what you said about it's like a community. I feel like I read a lot of second chance in the medical line. And I think it's just because like it feels like one of those careers that once you're in, especially if you maybe travel around or whatever and work in it in that capacity, like you have the potential of running into somebody again.
Yeah, it's very it's like one of those professions, I think, where only somebody in the profession can truly understand you, right? It's and so it's interesting to see, because I think not all, but most of them seem to be stories between two medical professionals. They have this understanding, and I think that's when it gets really interesting too, because it's just a view behind the curtain. And if I think about Grey's Anatomy and Chicago Med and ER, rarely is the love interest somebody who works outside of the hospital, right? And
right,
so
yeah.
It is interesting to see these two people who they can only understand what their lives are like. And so it's getting to, it's that fly on the wall. Well, how do these people fall in love when they're, working on a patient?
Well, part of the notes from The Right for Harlequin is dynamic and dedicated medical professional protagonists at the top of their game. So I'm assuming that both of them have to be both medical professionals. And I think in a way, even if it's not like a second chance, it's a trope that doesn't have that built-in chemistry, that part of it kind of already gives us a little bit of chemistry. Because like you said, Christina, like they know what the other person is dealing with. If one's a surgeon and one's a nurse, she understands his stress level, because maybe they work the same shift or they're part of the same team or whatever. Like it already gives us some chemistry, regardless, I think, of the trope. So I know.
And they both are, they're both, I don't know if invested is the right word, but they both understand the high stakes of the role.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's a great tool for relationship building and chemistry too. You have that medical emergency where whatever differences these characters have, they need to put that aside to get through whatever emergency that they're dealing with at that time. And then there's that, that after period of being on the anxiety, high or whatever from dealing with a stressful situation, and whether that leads to a fight for some conflict or some, nice lovemaking to deal with the tension. It's a lot of tools available to the author.
Yeah. Alicia, did you feel like with this being your first, the, I guess, kind of amount of medicalness in it, was it overwhelming? Do you feel like it was a nice balance? Was it just, just enough? Like, how do you feel about that?
It was just enough. It was enough for I think I understood it a little bit more because of having some of the same issues that one of the characters has. But if you come into it not knowing anything about it, that it makes sense. It's not too medical jargony, if that makes sense.
Did you read another one, Alicia, or was that it?
That was it. But I am going to read the second one in the series because it's about his father, the main character in this one's father, and the heroine in this book's mother falling in love, and they're both in their 70s.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, older romance. Love it.
I love when older couples get together. It's just like candy to me. I love that stuff.
Yeah. I have to give it to this line. I do feel like medical especially is really giving us more, older heroines and heroes, which is cool to see for sure. Christina, what did you read?
I read two. I read Her Secret Rio Baby by Luana DaRosa.
DaRosa. Yeah. Okay.
I really liked it. That was my very first medical. So it was great. And I'm glad you guys chose to do Medical March because I probably wouldn't have picked them up. So I really liked it. It's about a surgeon who is the chief of a hospital. or has a very prominent position in her home hospital, but has to go to another country in South America and inherits a hospital. I mean, I didn't even know that was a thing, but
Me neither.
she inherits a hospital and has a one-night stand with another doctor who she doesn't know is a doctor, and gets pregnant. And upon the inheritance of the hospital, meets him again. And from there, they try to figure out what they're going to do in the new reality with this baby on the way. So it was great. It was 5 stars, I would say, for me, up until probably the 80% mark, where the third act breakup happened, and the reason just didn't make sense.
Yeah.
And so I think I ended up giving it like 4 stars. But other than that, it was great. It was definitely one of those character-driven novels. But I liked it. I would read her again. And I loved put it in a new setting outside of North America, and I'm on board. So
yeah. I love that, because that's like her second novel. That's her second medical. I think she has her third one is out now, but she's a new author. I read the first one. I need to read the one that you read. The first one was really, really good too. So now I'm like, okay, I need to pick this one up. I don't know why I didn't pick it up this one.
Yeah.
What about the medical stuff? Did it feel overwhelming with it being your first one? Was it good? Nice balance?
I would say it was a little light on the medical stuff.
Okay.
It was more about her. The medical really only came into play with the inheritance of this hospital from her father, and whether or not she was going to keep it or have a new chief of staff take over. And it was more that sort of conflict about the ownership of the hospital. The love interest, the surgeon, was running a secret medical clinic in some of the poorer areas of the city. But again, there wasn't a whole lot of focus on the clinic. So I think I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of that. But that was about it for that one.
Mm-hmm. And what was the other one you read?
The other one was Nurses Outback Temptation by
Amy Andrews.
Amy Andrews.
And I loved it.
I love that book.
All the way. It was fantastic. And now I want to read everything that she's written. So
She's great. She's so great.
Yeah, it was fantastic. So if you read it, nurse from the UK goes to Australia to fly under or to work as I guess it's a flight nurse.
It sounds like a flight nurse, yeah.
Yeah, where they go out to remote areas of Australia that that don't have easy access to medical professionals. And so it was great. It was great. There was a lot more medical stuff in this.
Amy Andrews was a nurse.
Yeah, that explains it. So yeah, it was great. The relationship, it was great. I loved it. Nothing bad to say. I thought it was wonderful, and I liked the setting, even though it was in Australia, which could really just turn into another version of London or New York, because it was in the farther removed places of Australia. It felt really like you really were in a different setting. So, yeah.
Oh, I love that you read that book. Alicia, you need to read that one too. Add that one to the TBR.
As we speak.
There's something really special, I think, when you know the author. I think all the authors have shared like the research that they put into their books, but like the ones that were medical professionals, it's like, oh yeah, you can tell. Like Amy Andrews, Sarah Morgan started with medical and eventually went to presents, but Sarah Morgan was a nurse too. I'm like, I need to get my hands on her old like medical romances and see.
Sarah Morgan, really?
Yeah. Sarah Morgan started with medical and was a nurse too. So yeah, it's so special. And Australia is a dream, okay? Talk about escape.
Yeah.
Someday.
I know. Yeah. If they'll have us, okay? Just let us in. Okay, Erin, what about you?
So the first one, I read two. The first one I read, it was Neonatal Doc on Her Doorstep, and this one's by Scarlet Wilson. This is book 2 in the neonatal nurses duology, but the first one is A Nurse to Claim His Heart by our friend Juliette Hyland. So I already had some emotional connections to at least the heroine of this story because she's the sister of the heroine in the first book. And we got a good dose of her in the first book being kind of cynical towards her sister's relationship and stuff. So she was kind of a sassy character in the first book. So I was excited to get to her romance in this one. And what happens is Dougie is our hero's name, which I love because I feel like this generation or recent generations, the name Dougie or Doug or Douglas just doesn't really come up much anymore. He's coming into Washington, D.C. to be a new neonatal doctor on this ward. And he has just the worst welcome to the country. Like his flight was delayed. And so he hasn't slept in a long time. His Airbnb was double booked and the other people got there first. And so he shows up to his shift at the hospital with all his luggage and everything because he had nowhere to drop it off.
Gosh.
But guess who needs a roommate because they can't make the rent on their own anymore after their sister moved out is our heroine, Alice. And so the sister and our hero from the first book, who is also a doctor on this neonatal ward, just kind of push this guy onto Alice and like, you need someone to stay with you. Like, he's a doctor, you can, it'll be fine. And so it starts out pretty fun with, her establishing the rules of her place. Like there will be no sports on television and, and he agrees to bake her. He's really good at baking. So he's like, I'll bake you some really nice treats and stuff. And so that becomes part of the agreement is he has to bake sweet things often enough because it's on a trial basis that he's going to be staying there. But of course, the trial basis gets complicated, when they start to get intimate and everything and romance. So it all unfolds. But as far as the medical side in this one, what I thought was interesting is it's neonatal, so we're dealing with preemie babies, and the main medical story was they were monitoring this preemie baby, but the big kind of development was really more with the mother. The mother was suffered with or struggled with anorexia. So they were having trouble with like beginning nursing and just making sure that mom stayed healthy to be able to be, there for the baby. So I thought that was an interesting way to go about things there and refreshingly realistic of, bringing in real issues into the story.
Well, hearing you talk about it, I was thinking about because he shows up to work with all of his luggage, right?
Yeah.
I was thinking about like we see a lot of duty, right? Like in Presents, it's like a duty to my country and I need to get married or whatever, like duty is a thing. And I feel like in the medical line, like hearing you talk about it, it's like you still got to show up for that shift. Like your shift doesn't care that your flight was delayed or whatever and you're jet lagged. Like medical situations don't stop. So it's almost like there's always going to be a third person in the relationship and it's their duty to this profession they've chosen, which I think you probably see like in romantic suspense, obviously, like following like, law enforcement and stuff like that. But like, I don't know. I feel like with medical, you're really thrown, like you're in it because so much of the story takes place in the medical setting.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we were talking about both of the characters being in the medical world. I think when I've seen, whether it's a TV show or whatever kind of medical setting, when there's a romance of a medical professional and someone outside the profession, it seems like there's always a thread of story about the medical person needing to explain, no, when I need to be on, I need to be on. And, I can't be your partner in that moment. I need to be there as the medical professional. And I feel like that conflict always kind of comes up. So I'm wondering if to avoid that being a repeat conflict in these, if it's just better for them both to be in the medical profession.
Because like, when you think about it, like you said, Christina, like it's a community, right? Like they work a lot, like, 12, 14-hour shifts. You're there so much. So you don't really have the time to like meet a girl at the bar,
Yeah. And I mean, to Erin's point, I mean, only someone in it can understand that when you get paged, you have to go, right?
You have to go.
And that, wherever you are doesn't matter, right? And I think that creates, that's a foundational understanding between the two people that they start off with in medical that you may not get in other areas, where in other lines or subgenres, I should say, like, how much can they really be enemies in medical, right? As you're going to have to work on that patient together. You're going to have to find a way to cooperate. You're going to have to find a way to, be in the same room with that person. There's no storming off. There's no getting bent out of shape because the person has to leave in the middle of dinner. There's no...
You're literally eating dinner in the break room.
Yeah. And if you're not home for 24 hours, nobody's going to question where you were because, right, we all get it. So
Yeah. What was your other one, Erin?
So my other one was Breaking the Single Mom's Rules by J.C. Harroway. And this one takes place in New Zealand. So our heroine, Kat, is the new latest doctor on in the Gulf Harbor ER. And she's coming in, it's her first day, and she's big about protocol, like making sure things, for reasons in her past, following protocol is the most important thing to do. And of course, there is a nurse practitioner there, Nash, that just kind of bends the rules quite often just to make sure that, the patients get the best care that they can. And he does some of this right under her seniority or supervision on the first day. And so they start out being very, very confrontational. She feels disrespected by this guy, and he feels that she's just too rigid. And so their working relationship is just strained from the get-go. But at parent pickup at the elementary school that day, who, comes out as newest best friends is their two daughters, because they share a class together. And so, of course, to nurture this relationship of their children having friends, is they have to make a truce to make sure that they have a great friendship and everything. And there's difficulty with them both being single parents. The mother is involved on Nash's side, and also their daughter has a form of asthma that can get pretty severe at times. And then our heroine, Kat, the father's not involved at all. He was not interested in being any way, shape, or form in the life of the child. And so Kat has some abandonment issues around that, and just nervousness in starting new relationships and everything. So lots of stuff to get around. And I can't remember. Oh, so the big medical thing in this one was Nash's daughter has a severe asthma attack, and they had to, they were working together initially, but she had to eventually say, it's like, you can't be here. Like, you're too attached. Like, I know you are, a nurse practitioner and you know what to do, but this is your daughter and you need to step back and, let us handle this. So which is, I thought made for just great reading. It's an intense situation, but her needing to follow her protocol and things like that, but also being right in that situation.
Yeah. Well, I read 2 as well. Guys, I feel like March was a horrible reading month for me. But I did make it through, Okay, so the first one that I read was Tempted by the Rebel Surgeon, which is Gulf Harbor ER, book number 1.
That's the first one.
Oh, yeah, by J.C. Harroway, yes. Okay, oh, yeah. So you had it. Oh, yours comes out literally it came out this month too. They came out they put them both out in March. I'm confused. I love how medical does that. When
they did the same with these two.
Yeah, they'll
The
put them both
son
out the
story
same
and
month.
the father's story came out the same month.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Okay. So, okay, I'll just be honest. I was not a fan of this one. I love JC Harroway. She used to write for Dare. I just did not. It's a second chance romance. Things got a little cloudy for me just because I feel like the hero comes back and he's applying for this job at the hospital, and the ex-girlfriend is like in this leadership role. She's actually on like the hiring panel, and I did appreciate that she took herself off of it once she learned that he was applying for this job, just to like not have like conflict of interest. But like she's really kind of snippy at him for a while, and these books aren't long, so I'm just like, oh gosh, like by the time she kind of got past it and the story kind of progressed, it just felt like everything felt like a little rushed at the end, and I was just like, I don't believe it at this point. Like, it's just, I hate saying when heroines are unlikable, but y'all know what I mean. Like, it's just, you are getting both of their perspective. I think if it was just her perspective the entire time, I probably would not have made it through. So I did like that we were getting his perspective, but I also think that just made it really real for me that like she's being kind of petty, and I don't really understand why. So that one unfortunately was a downer. There was a lot of workplace stuff at this one. I don't want to say it was like heavy on the medical. There's like a big car accident that brings in a lot of people, but it was like, you do see them working together. You see them like working overtime and like being exhausted together afterwards, and kind of going back to that community again. Like, okay, I live closer. You're not driving all the way home. Let's just walk to my place. You can sleep on the couch kind of thing. Like, again, like they know and understand the life that they're both working in. So it's like, I got your back kind of thing. And I love seeing that camaraderie. I just think on the romance end, it just did not work for me. And then I read, because I was like, I can't be on here being the Debbie Downer talking about, So I read Unlocking the Ex-Army Doc's Heart by Juliette Hyland, which is actually her debut. And oh my gosh, I'm so proud of her. This book was so good. And I have to shout her out. She did announce that she got a book picked up by Harlequin's Romance line. So we will now be getting books from her in 2 lines. So the thing with the cover is you see the cover and it's this gorgeous male model. So you think the book's about him, but it's not. Like, the ex-army doc is actually the heroine. And there's like no chemistry here. The only real, I guess, chemistry is like she was a child star and he's like a TV doc now. Like he's a doctor, but he does some things on TV. And he was like a huge fan of hers when she was a child star. And the book is it takes place in Alaska. It's kind of like, are you hiding out here kind of thing? She's just like, I don't want to be like in the spotlight. And come to find out, like, her mom, who was kind of a like momager, like terrible person to her, is actually his manager. And the whole like ex-child star that's trying to just live their life, you can already probably guess where the like conflict arises. But yeah, I really loved it. I think Juliette has a way of making these like fun and flirty on top of being medicals, which I really appreciate. I really just love how she's able to do that. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. And it's like a lot of it is set during the fall. There's like some like Halloween festival preparation. I thought it was really good. So that's Unlocking the Ex-Army Doc's Heart if you're, looking for something to add to your TBR. So will we all be picking up medicals in the future, Alicia and Christina?
Yes.
Yes, I will, definitely. I really was surprised at how much I enjoyed it. So, yeah.
Yay! Alicia, you said yes too?
Mm-hmm. But this is my issue with a lot of romances, like the miscommunication thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it bugs me. I'm like, I understand. Instead of telling him he has a kid, she goes to his house and they like have sexy time.
Yeah.
Like, tell him he has a child.
Tell him he has a child already. No, they're gonna drag it out and make it brutal.
And that was the only reason I knocked it down to a 4. It's like he meets after he gets mad because she didn't tell him for 7 years that he had a child.
I think that's what can be tricky about not even like I'm pregnant and I haven't told you yet. But like, right. I think that's what can be tricky about we have a 12-year-old kid and you don't know about him. It's like, How long
she
can you?
actively tried to get a hold of him, but she didn't try like hard enough. Like she works in the hospital that his dad works in. Like say something.
Yeah, yeah.
That was just like just in general, like miscommunication, especially that kind of miscommunication. And like it's like no, you don't need to bang. You need to tell him you have a child with special needs that's 7 years old and wants to meet you. Like yeah.
Well, advice from you two, Christina and Alicia, y'all go first. As having, these both be like your first time for anybody that's listening that hasn't read one, what would you say? Did you guys just get on the website and like browse through? Did you find specific authors? Like what would be your recommendation for, okay, if you want to try it, get on the website and do blank, fill in the blank?
I would definitely look at the website because that's where I purchased mine. But these I actually already owned. This one I already owned because I needed like to spend $5 more to get like a coupon, so I just threw it in there. It was kind of by accident. So, but definitely like check the blurbs, see the like trope combo, and see if it would work for you specifically. Because I'm sure, even though this is my first one, I'm sure there's medical romances that span all different types of tropes.
Yeah. What about you, Christina?
Yeah, I agree with Alicia. And that's exactly what I did. I just went on the website and read a couple of the synopsis and just chose two that I thought were interesting. Yeah, and I think you need to, and this is true of every line or every genre, I think you need to read more than one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I really liked the Luana DaRosa, the first one that I read, but you really had to suspend belief. And I know that's a given. That's a given in romance. But, when you think about it, it was all about a secret baby. I mean, the title is Her Secret Rio Baby, but these are two surgeons.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
you think they'd be the first ones to be like, I'm pregnant.
Right. You can't exactly hide it for that long.
You might have to do the C-section.
Yeah.
Just letting you know.
Like you guys know how this works, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did a secret baby happen? So yeah, but and it was so different. I mean, one was light on the medical stuff, and the other was full into the it wasn't a hospital, but the whole medical environment and working on patients. So I think you need the perspective of at least one before you make a decision on whether or not it's for you.
What do you think, Aaron?
I would definitely recommend medicals to people to just give them a try, because it's more just a workplace romance that takes place in a medical facility than it is a medical based story.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I think there is more that people can find that they like about these romances than they would guess.
Yeah. I mean, do you think obviously you think medical professionals, these are people that spent some time in school, especially if it's like a doctor or a surgeon we're talking. So like age, I think, is a factor, right? But I still think anybody, especially if you find a specific like this one that I read by Juliette Hyland, like I think anybody could read it and it wouldn't feel like, oh, this is for somebody that's older, clearly, right? Like you just have to kind of do some digging and find the authors that are right for you. Like the beautiful thing about category is like, the line will put out 4 books. You don't have to buy all 4 of them, you can get the one that works for you. So, but do you think part of the thing too is just maybe the age thing?
What do you mean? Like we're tired of reading romances where the person's like 21 or 18 or something?
Well, do you think like a 21-year-old would want to read a medical knowing that like, okay, this is like a physician's assistant? Well, how long did that person go to school? They're clearly not in their 20s, like, do you think that could be like a potential turnoff?
Maybe if you're younger, like if you're late teens, early 20s, because I know for me specifically, like you end up thinking about yourself in that role. But like as I've gotten older, I do appreciate that the medical line has a lot of older protagonists. Like
Yeah.
the sequel to this book, both of the people are in their late 60s. Like
Mhm.
you don't get many romances of people in their late 60s.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. I'd say it's if someone's a romance reader that they really like their setup where one of the characters is quite new on life and sort of naive, and they like that sort of guide, mentor, what am I saying here? The other one being the other partner being more experienced in life and kind of guiding them through that. If they like that dynamic, it might be this might be a little different for them because, you know, both our love interests are medical professionals. They've gone to a lot of school. They're very educated.
Yeah.
And so
Life experience.
yeah, they have the life experience, right?
This was fun. This was
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad we did this.
I am too. Yeah.
I hope it encourages people to check out the medical line. Like we shared at the beginning, if you're in North America, unfortunately, you're not going to go into the store and see these. You have to get on Harlequin's website, which I think is great. You're going to get them like a month early.
Yeah.
You can download them on ebook and read them on the Gloss app. Like get on there and check them out. If you're not getting on.
Or if they don't have physical copies anymore, you can just download the Kindle version through.
Yeah. You can always like check out Amazon. People have them on Thrift Books too. Like they're available. So yeah, go check them out. I think they're great. I'm really glad we did this. Erin, do you want to tell everybody what we're reading next month?
Next month, we are doing a Temptation April. So dust off those Temptation novels and
dust off those Temptation novels.
Those lovely painted covers. And yeah, we're going to just dive in. We've got some great guests. I won't spoil that. But yeah, our listeners will love it.
I'm excited. Alicia, Christina, do you have any Temptation background? Will Temptation April be your first Temptation?
No, I have a ton. That huge used bookstore find that actually got me on the podcast was 90% Temptation.
Oh yeah,
So
you're gonna have a great time sifting through that.
Yeah, I've never read Temptation before.
I haven't read one yet either, Christina. We're in this together. So excited. Well, do y'all have anywhere that people can keep up with you online?
I don't. I'm just a reader.
I aspire to be just a reader again one day.
Yeah. I'm everywhere. I'm everywhere.
Okay, plug your stuff, Alicia.
I just changed my name on everything, so I'm just double checking the name. So it's Bird and Book on Twitter, and Birdie and the Books everywhere else. Instagram, on my YouTube channel.
Congratulations on starting that, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a lot. There's on the channel already. There's an author interview with independent author Julie Zantopoulos that I did about a week ago.
Awesome. Erin, do you have anything coming up?
Let's see. I am going to be talking to author Mia Heitzelman on my YouTube channel. That is the 18th of April. So we're going to be talking about her latest book, Monopolove. And yeah, she is just so great. So I'm so excited about that one.
And we will be, besides Temptation April, Erin and I will be reading our next Nan Reinhardt in April and talking about it. It's book 1 in her new series.
Yes.
So super excited to be doing that. We will list the title in the show notes. I think it comes out maybe the beginning of April. So April's going to be a fun month. I can't wait to get back into reading, you guys. March.
So it should be available on the website now.
Check Tooley's website and it will tell it, and I'll put it in the show notes as well.
Yes,
really excited.
We're also doing an episode in April where we're going to be reading Lee LeMay White's second book. So that's Bound by a Sicilian Secret. And we'll be doing that with the 50% podcast, who will be guesting with us.
Yay!
Yeah, she just sent me the copy. I just got it yesterday.
Awesome. So much fun reading.
Yes.
Well, listeners, make sure you check the show notes. We'll have links to the books that all of us read in there, and you can check them out, as well as we'll have a link to Harlequin's and Mills and Boon's website, which will take you directly to the medical books. If you are an aspiring writer, Medical will be doing a blitz in May. We will also have an episode coming out where we talk with one of the editors about the Medical blitz. So get your first chapters ready, people. That's all they need is a query letter in the first chapter.
Really?
One chapter.
Yes.
Yep.
But we will have an episode all about it. Thank you to the wonderful Lori Johnson for coming out and talking to us about that. But yes, thank you for everybody that read with us. If you did read something good, hit us up, send us an email. Let us know what you all read and what you thought of it. And go support Medical, because we all four enjoyed what we read. So there you go. Stamp of approval. And Erin and I will talk with you in our next episode. Have a lovely day, everybody.
Bye.